Hey everyone, welcome back to Adobe Live. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Cody and I will be your host for the next hour. Today we are joined by the incredible landscape illustrator Maddy Bellwoar. How are you doing today, Maddy?
Hi everyone. Hi Cody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what our project is going to be. But before we get into that, I'm going to say hi to everyone in chat. Hey Jack, Jack is our moderator today. Thank you so much for holding down the fort. Oliver, Chris, Sean, Umacorn, everyone else in chat. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to hand it over to Maddy before we get working on the illustration so she can kind of give you an idea of who she is and kind of show you a little bit of her work.
Thank you. Hi everybody. My name is Maddie. I am a digital and traditional painter, and just to give you a little bit of a look at what I do in Photoshop, I do landscapes mostly. And what inspires me most are landscapes with like a really I don't know, a strong atmosphere and mood. Generally, happy scenes, sunny scenes are usually what get me, but usually it's something to do with light, whether it's the sun or cozy artificial lights, things like that. But heavy atmosphere, strong atmosphere, and beautiful light is what inspires me most in my landscapes that I do.
That's so amazing. I can definitely see that inspiration because you always have such rich, incredible atmosphere in all of your work. I love when you have like twinkle lights and just like the dapple lighting that you always do is so incredible.
Thank you.
So yeah, of course. Yeah, let's head over to Photoshop and see what our project is.
All right, great. So I want to do a landscape and we're going to focus on atmosphere, and I want to give some tips on how I create a strong atmosphere in my work. And I prepped a little bit so that we could like get into the most fun parts on stream today. So I chose a mountain scene because there's a lot of really cool atmospheric perspective with the depth and the distance. And so I have a sketch here, and how I organize my file for anyone who is curious. I usually have my sketch layer above everything else on my layers panel, and then I put the sketch layer on multiply mode and lower the opacity so I can see through it. It's still helpful, but it's not so strong anymore. And then I just lock that layer so I don't, I usually lock it so I don't accidentally draw on that layer because
Yeah.
that's the worst. And then below that, all I did was I kind of blocked in, I prepped the shapes for us so that we could get into painting and color. So what I have is just the background layer, and then these big shapes for the mountain and the distant trees, closer up trees, and these little cottage that we're gonna do.
Wow, that looks amazing. I love the layering already. You can really tell there's depth, a lot of depth in the image. Yeah.
Thank you. It's cool how yeah, with basic you can show a lot with basic shapes. I'm trying to work
Yeah.
on that. Like focusing on the basic shapes before details. So yeah, what I want to do is start with so in my workflow, this is something that I would do and then go through each of these layers and add color. So I'm going to start with the background. I just think it's natural to move back to front, so I usually
Mhm.
go that way. So I'm just going to add color so we can start to get a mood going here. I'm using a lightly textured brush, something that's can block things in, but just add a little bit of texture along the way. And for these shapes, one thing that I love to do is use the lock transparency. That's the little checkerboard icon up here on the layers palette. If anybody doesn't know about that, it's one of my favorite tools because it's really convenient when you're blocking in and painting these big shapes, because I can just kind of swoop with my brush and not worry about staying in the lines and just
Yeah.
easily paint. Yeah, makes it a lot easier.
I do remember on your Instagram that you were talking about possibly making a brush pack. Is this one of your own brushes or is it
Yes.
it is? Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I've actually made a few over the years. I got really hooked into it. It's a lot of fun. And I even started like scanning my own textures, I'd make in
Nice.
traditional. Yeah, so this is from the I have a couple sets, a traditional texture set and an environment set that I use both of those really often for landscapes. Um, So yeah, I'm just bouncing around here. And this part of the painting process isn't always the most beautiful, but it's just blocking in that first layer so that everything has a color going on and a
Hey,
starting
you got to
point.
get that good foundation in.
Yeah. So we gotta start somewhere and then we can take a look at it and start tweaking, go from there. So I thought it might be fun to maybe, and I'm starting this off with greens, but we're actually, we're getting into the autumn. So I was thinking maybe actually it might be fun to throw some orange in there
Ooh, yeah.
along. Cody, when I think of your art, I just get like that warm autumn feeling. I
Aw,
love
thank
it.
you.
All right, so we'll hint that we'll move a little bit over to like an olive green maybe. Let's try that actually. A little warmer.
We actually have a question in chat.
Okay, great.
Um, Somebody said, "What's a good way to get over blank page syndrome when you have a blank page in front of you and don't have any ideas for it?"
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, for me, one thing that I do is I keep like inspiration folders and things so that I have, that really helps because if I just open up a canvas and I have nothing to look at to help me like, spur on that inspiration, it is hard. Like I generally don't start from complete scratch in the sense that I don't just open a blank canvas and start. Usually I like to compile like a little mood board or a reference board and have like a couple different things to kind of begin the inspiration process. So I would say if you don't have something like that, kind of creating saving little morsels of inspiration when you see
Yeah.
them and keeping that together. Other than that, okay, there's advice that I've gotten for like tidying your house that actually works for art really well. So the advice is like when you don't want to clean and they say, well, just put on a timer, do it for 15 minutes or something like
Mm,
that. But that's the same thing with art. Like let's say you haven't done, because I sometimes people say I have an art block, I haven't been able to do art in a while and I want to, how do I get started? Maybe just put on a timer, kind of like just say, I'm gonna do it. I might not be feeling it, but
yeah.
I'm just gonna do it for 15 minutes. And most of the time, your inspiration will start flowing. Like by the time you're done 15 minutes, you kind of gotten into it.
That is so true. When you just like force yourself to like get past the I'm afraid to make lines, I'm afraid to make something that's,
Hmm.
quote unquote bad. Like if you put on that timer and you
Yes.
force yourself to just make something, it can kind of help you, even if like the first iteration isn't like what you land on, maybe, like working through
Yep.
that can kind of help inspire making something that you actually really like.
So true. And even if it turns out that you don't make anything amazing, that's totally fine. But you can, you did something that day and you can feel good about that. It's not always gonna be, the inspiration doesn't always flow every day. And if you gave it a shot, you can be proud of that. And then maybe the next day it's gonna come easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I think, okay, so here we are. I don't love how it looks here, but everything is blocked in. So now we can
Mhm.
start like looking at it and saying like, what can we do from here? There's one thing that I love to do to help check and understand values and like the darks and lights in your painting, and that is the color lookup shortcut that you can use to like switch to black and white. And I'll just show that real quick because in case anybody doesn't know it, I really love this. It's a shortcut that you have to set up once, but once you do that, then it's there for you. So you can go to View Proof Setup Custom, and then under Proof Conditions, the drop down here, Device to Simulate, select Working Gray dot gain 20%. Just select that from the drop down and press OK. So if you do that, then every time you press Control Y, you'll flip back and forth between this
Oh, cool.
black and white to color view. And the cool thing about it is you can color pick and paint the real colors while you're in this mode. So if I switch back, then it's not just picking a gray. So you can paint in that mode and then switch back. So I find it really helpful. So when I look at it in black and white right now, what I'm seeing is, wow, the mountain is really dark. If we
Mhm.
want an atmosphere and want to feel like it's distant and glowy, and we need this to be a lot lighter. So it's easier for me to see that sometimes when I look in black and white.
Right.
I'm gonna merge a couple layers. I'm gonna merge the trees and the mountain. Right now, I just feel like it's time. That's literally it. I just go by feel. It feels like it's time. I'm using the
That's very
smudge
brave.
brush. I've embraced a more like painterly workflow over the
That's
years, and
great.
now I'm like, I like to merge when I can.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you also do traditional work, as you mentioned. So I guess you are, in a sense, used to working with one layer when you do traditional work.
Yes, I think that's helped. That's helped me feel more comfortable. Okay, so what I want to do now is make a selection. So right now I have this all on one layer. I probably could put this on a second layer. So I think I'll do that. I'm going to um, cut this actually onto two separate layers because I want to work on the values of the mountain in the back. So I'm going to separate that, and then I'm going to go to image, adjust. Let's look at the curves. And I'm going to just lift up and brighten that
Hmm.
background layer, but look how it feels more
Oh,
distant
wow. Yeah.
right away. And yeah, let's get these nestled in here.
That's a really, using curves is something that I've never thought of. That's a really easy way of just lifting everything on that layer, really, instead of like having to redo all of your colors or something.
Yes. I've been really enjoying finding ways to kind of change and fix some things I've done if I because sometimes you like how you painted something, but it's not right value-wise or whatever. And then
Hmm.
it's nice if you can make it work and you don't have to redo something that you liked. Okay, so another thing that I like to do to push atmosphere is use certain adjustment layers like color dodge, overlay. They always give like a nice feeling, glowy kind of feeling. So I'm gonna try, I think soft light and overlay are both really nice. I'm gonna try soft light, and I just use an airbrush and grab like a nice warm color here. And I think I'm gonna create a clipping mask. I'm gonna clip that layer, right click, create clipping mask. I'm gonna clip onto the mountain and then just kind of add like a little bit of a glow up there. And then sometimes I use like a blue and kind of add a blue glow too. I don't really like that in that situation, but it's just trial and error. That's another great thing about digital because
Yeah.
in gouache, I mainly work in gouache in traditional, and you can do some trial and error, but like you can only change so much, and then you start, you can't really, your paper doesn't recover after so many changes. So I do appreciate that about digital. All right. So I have some brushes that I like to use for when I'm painting environments, especially if I'm doing like a quick concept or something like that, and I don't have time to or want to paint everything out in a really detailed way. I've got some brushes with like bold textures. This is a brush that has like a very mountain rocky texture to it. So I'm going to try to add some of that to the background mountain. I'm going to try it on a separate layer and create a clipping mask.
Yeah, that speeds up your work amount so much.
Yeah. And I try to find ways to kind of like paint, like, how do you say, blend it in. So I'll use like some brushes like that, some stamp brushes, and then um, maybe take a brush with like sometimes a similar texture if I have one, and try to like paint in and like work it in. So you do a little bit of like your own paint strokes over top of the stamp brush, and then it kind of feels more integrated into the
Mhm.
painting. Mm, I'm gonna switch to a flat brush.
I just wanted to say that everyone in chat is absolutely loving your work.
Oh, thank you.
So Roger in chat said, I'm really looking forward to this session, Maddie. And we also have somebody in chat that said, this already feels like a sunny September morning.
Aw, thank you. That's so sweet. Thanks, everyone. I have to admit, I'm having a little bit of like a hard time deciding completely what I want to do with this lighting, which is, uh, but that, I don't know about you. Sometimes I know exactly what I want to do when I paint, and sometimes I'm just trying things, like, ooh, what
Yeah.
about this color? What if I shifted this? And you kind of like the painting sort of grows that way rather than having a clear picture of what you want. So it's nice to try things out, see what you think. And then, one thing that I like to do for that is, well, I don't know if we're far enough along yet, but I like to use the adjustment layers like color balance and selective color. We'll do that in a little bit. I want to add a couple more highlights, but I like to kind of shift through color options that way too and see if anything like interesting happens.
Yeah, it sounds like you have you try to just like keep an open mind about like the way that like the final product of the painting's gonna look and kind of just you're willing to experiment. I think that that's a great mindset to have when approaching artwork because if you like have this idea in your mind of how exactly you want your painting to work out and it's just like not working, you can end up getting stuck too.
So true. Sometimes I've definitely had that where I've been kind of forcing it because I was like, oh, I did have this idea and it's not turning out that way. And um, one thing actually, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Loish's work.
Hmm.
She's one of my favorite artists, and I saw her talk about that one time, going through like kind of scrolling through the adjustment layers with I think it was selective color that she was using, and how sometimes she completely changes the mood of her painting. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was kind of like, yeah. So I started experimenting with that more, and I found it really helpful. So I could pass along that idea.
Yeah, Loish's work is absolutely incredible. If you guys are not familiar with Loish, Loish,
Yes.
um, her work is just phenomenal. Like she uses color in like the most amazing ways.
Hmm. And it helped to see that she was also like experimenting because, like you said, like she uses color in such an amazing way. And it's like I thought, oh my gosh, she just sees it perfectly in her head every time. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have these ideas that like, oh, this person just knows exactly what they're doing. But then to see her saying like, oh, actually, sometimes I don't, and sometimes I have to like just try, and it's like, cool,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
relatable.
yeah. So I am flipping my canvas. I have a shortcut set up, Control F for flip, so it's easy to remember. But I like to do that because flipping just gives you that fresh look, and sometimes you notice things that problems or things that you didn't see before. When you flip, like things might be wonky or kind of slanted in a weird way or something. I don't know
Yeah.
if you have that too.
Yes, my work is always slanted to the right. I'm left-handed, so I have a tendency to draw like all of my characters always slanted one way.
Yeah, I have that too. Like they're so slanty. I'm like, I don't even want to see what my traditional art is doing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like ignorance is bliss. Don't show me that in the mirror. Because it's really slanty. But anyway, flipping it is yeah, that solves it. It's great. Oh, I have some tree brushes too. I might break some of those out because we've got a whole forest going on back there.
Yeah. We have another question in chat from Justin. They say, I'm just now getting into digital painting. Amazing. Welcome. How do you not get overwhelmed by which brush to choose and which brushes to have?
Oh, I am I am a
Hard-hitting
brush
questions today.
yeah. I'm a brush hoarder. I am like one of those people. I would say as a beginner, it's really important to focus on focus on the art and not the brushes. Like don't think it's gonna make or break it. It's not gonna make or break it, is basically as someone who loves brushes and I've got like so many. If you start off with basic brushes, that's probably the best. It's probably going to be the least confusing and least distracting. And I feel like over time, like as you start to find out what kind of style art you want to make, like as you find your art style more, you can maybe you can find brushes that like cater to that style. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's partly what inspires the different brush sets I've made is like when I over time I've gotten inspired to paint in different styles and I was like, oh, I want like a painterly brush set. Oh, I
Yeah.
want a and then I've sort of created brush sets that help with those textures. But I think at the beginning, if you're not painting in, you know what I mean, and you're just kind of getting started and getting into it, maybe it's, you don't want to have to like be overwhelmed by that. I think it's okay
Yeah.
to use basic brushes at the beginning.
Yeah, like like you kind of ended up filling a need where you found you had like a gap in your brush, like
Yeah,
as you developed your work. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. For me, I also like I started with basic brushes when I first started working in Photoshop. And then I also, if you have a CC subscription, you can download Kyle Webster's brush library for free. And you can just experiment with his brushes. That's what I did. I mean, just pick
yep.
some random brushes too, textures that might, look nice to you or something, and just try it out, just experiment and try to keep an open mind.
There's so many good ones. It's crazy. Like you'll have more than you need for
Yeah,
sure if you do that.
definitely. I've never even tried like three-fourths of them.
Yeah, there's so many. But it is like I definitely, I'm never gonna be that person that says like brushes don't matter because I do
hmm
think they matter. I just don't think I think they can help you, but I don't think like when you have a specific style you want to do, it can maybe make things faster, things like that. But even if you only ever use like the round brush, you're gonna be fine. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So don't worry.
I love this lighting, this painterly effect that you're adding to the grass. This is looking awesome.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna try maybe a little shading. I'm not exactly sure what color I'm gonna add yet. I'm gonna experiment, but I'm making a new layer. I'm just selecting up here so I can work within the mountain. And I think I'm gonna try multiply mode. I might switch to overlay, but I want to maybe darken things a little bit. So I'm using the airbrush because I just want to sort of make a soft gradient and just see how it goes before I commit. Think I like it. And then this here, this part of the mountain, I want to be a little bit more in shadow, I think. I have to be careful because I do want this to feel lighter back here, so I can't go too
hmm
dark. Gotta find that happy place. And I wonder if the sky, let's see it, let's play around with different colors in the sky and maybe like little wispy clouds.
It comes
What
together
they
so fast.
Oh, thank you. Once I feel like sometimes there's like that period before, and a lot of people call it the ugly stage. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I where you're like, oh, I'm not quite seeing it, not quite seeing it, and then you have like a moment where it's like, okay, it started, and now I can see it. I can see where we're gonna go from here. And for me, it's almost always when there's something not working with the values. That is when it
Right.
has that ugly feeling, that bad feeling to
hmm
it. It's when the values aren't working yet. And as soon as you start to get them like close to where they need to be, it just feels good. And you're like, okay, I'm there. I'm gonna get there.
You can see the potential.
Yep. Yep.
Natasha in chat says, I'm a beginner. Do you have any easy digital painting ideas slash landscapes for beginners? Don't you have a domestica class for
I
beginners?
I do, but it is a gouache painting class,
Oh,
my
okay,
domestica
gotcha.
course. Yeah, but that's a good question. So I think it's different for different people potentially, but for me, I find that just like in general, landscapes with foliage, I find plants a little bit more, I don't know if I would say they're more forgiving to draw than like things with a lot of architectural elements. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
hmm
Because then you have to be precise with your. Sorry, guys, I'm bouncing around to so many brushes because I just haven't found what I want to use here. Um, I feel like with things that involve a lot of architecture, you don't have a lot of room for mistakes, or it's just not as forgiving. And if you're painting all natural, um like subjects, then if if a tree is a little different shape than what you were planning, or a branch goes in a different direction, it's just like, why not? It's a lot more
Yeah.
like go with the flow.
Organic.
Or
Organic
yeah, or
shapes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Organic shapes are pretty forgiving. But I would say just keep trying and keep doing like quick studies. That's what helped me out the most, was doing like short timed studies and then moving on to the next thing, and not spending all too much time on one. Because okay, I'm gonna try to like summarize this, but I feel like when you're making a painting, the most difficult and most important decisions are coming in the early parts of the painting process.
Hmm.
The main composition, the value setup for the values, the basic color scheme, all of that you have to decide on. And then after a while, you're kind of just rendering and detailing and doing stuff that's like, it's just, you just kind of like taking your time, doing a little, you know what I mean, detailing.
Yeah.
But I feel like the hardest work is done. And yet that detailing part can take, I mean, you could be working for a couple of days on something,
Uh-huh.
depending on how detailed. So I think when you're starting out and you really want to get like the most benefit from your time, if you do like smaller studies, like an hour study, keep it like loose, don't detail it to, it's just a study, it's not like a portfolio piece. And if you do, like if you spend 10 hours doing 10 different sketches versus like one 10-hour painting, I think the benefit is so much greater what
Right.
you'll get from that.
Because you get to practice a lot more foundational aspects of different paintings.
Exactly. You get to do 10 different foundational setups versus one, and then lots
Yeah.
and lots and lots of detailing. But you also have to do what you find fun. So if you try that
Sure.
and you hate it, then you know what? Throw away that advice. You know what I mean? Find a
Yeah.
different way.
That's
Because
so true. I feel like I've been through so many experiences over the course of my art career where like I felt like bad for not following like the advice of other
hmm
artists just because like I felt like the way that I was doing things was kind of like maybe seen as unorthodox or something like that.
Yeah.
But like whatever works for you, that's what matters.
Yeah, it's so true. Like you have to, because it does take a lot of time and focus and energy to do this stuff. And so you have to enjoy it. You have to find a way to do it that you enjoy. Because otherwise,
Yeah.
what's the point? And you won't stick
Yeah.
with it. So have fun, make it fun. Everybody's just like figuring it out for themselves and sharing what worked. But in the end, that's what we're all just figuring it out. So, if you got to find what feels good for you, and it might be different than other people. So take all advice with a grain of salt, try it out, and then yeah, maybe try something different if you don't vibe.
I just love how you're implying a forest back there with just some simple blobby shapes. Like
Thank
it's
you.
so it's so cool.
Thanks. That's what those speed paintings really helped me with, because I used to be so uptight, I guess. I really
Yeah.
wanted everything to be like clean.
Hmm.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your art style. You know what I mean? Like no shade. But I just wanted to I wanted to loosen up. You know what I mean? That's like I was trying, that's the style I wanted to get to when I was having trouble. And doing those quick studies really helped me, because it was like the idea was at the end of like an hour or two, you want to have something done. So it can't be like you just did this corner over here and the corner looks really nice, but everything else is not there, like empty. So it forced me to like just quickly go around, and if one area is, it's going to be maybe a little bit messy everywhere, but at least everywhere is slightly rendered.
Right. It will have been worked on
Yeah.
wholly a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in the end, I found out like, oh, actually, it's amazing how much you can get from just that small amount of work. And I hear artists talk about brushstroke efficiency, which is really a cool idea. And it's the idea of like how minimal can you be in your brushstrokes and still imply something effectively.
Mhm.
And I think it's very satisfying when you can find like that one brushstroke, you know what I mean, that like tells a whole story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
it's easy to get caught up in feeling like you need to do like have everything have all of these details, like even stuff like way off in the distance, and
Hmm.
like it takes a lot of self-discipline to like kind of like get away from that, you know?
It does. It does. It really does take discipline because I don't know. I feel like I was fighting against all my instincts. So I
Yeah.
really had to like force it. I'm gonna try one more time with the curves back here because I feel like as I've been painting, I've been like darkening the mountain again, and I want to lighten it back up. So I there's a couple different ways. I'll either go to curves or levels is also really nice for this. Like I will try either one and just see. Sometimes one works better than the other. Just experimenting. Mm, maybe I want. See, what I like about curves is you can add a lot more points. You can be like a little bit. I feel like I can be sometimes have a little bit more control with curves, but I would say to experiment with both of these. You guys, if you haven't used them, they're really, really powerful tools, and it's not just for photo editing, for digital
Yeah.
painting and art. It's great.
How long have you been doing landscapes now? Have you always done landscapes or did you start off doing other things?
I was more into characters for a long time, and I started getting into landscapes, I would say about like maybe 6 years ago or so, because I think it was like around the time that I moved to the Netherlands is when I started getting more into environments. And I think part of it was like the change of scenery, moving to a new
Hmm.
place and really liking the landscape, and it's seeing that and getting ideas for art. I sort of got into it that way. One thing I want to try, I don't know if it's going to look good, but I think one thing that might be fun to try is a bit of like a bit of mist or something like that.
Mm.
Let's just see. I have some brushes, some cloud brushes that could help. Just going to select an area that I want to paint in. So it'll kind of like isolate that for me. I kind of like it. And one thing that I like to do is paint in and erase out. So sometimes I paint in an area that I know it's like too much, but then I'll choose a brush for my eraser that's either like the same brush or something else that has a cool similar texture, and then erase out. And sometimes you get interesting effects that way instead of just thinking that every shape you paint has to be created with the paintbrush. You can also create shapes with the eraser.
That's so true. Just like thinking about that negative space and kind of sculpting away your shapes too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's fun. And happy accidents. Happy accidents are
Yes.
so, right? Finding them in digital is fun. Yeah. All right, I think it's far enough along that I can try some fun effects things. And so I'm going to go into the adjustment layers. And one thing that's fun to play with is color lookup. So I don't always use this, but I do use it when I feel stuck and I feel like a picture is just not working and I want to see what can Photoshop suggest. So you go to this drop down here and you can click through. Okay, hold on, let me move this above. You can click through some different effects. Um, and look at this. It's kind of like a
Wow.
LUT filter, and you can get a totally different mood.
It
And I
totally
really,
unifies the color palette too.
it really does. Because I was a bit like playing around with a bunch of different stuff, and this really does unify it. So I like this, and just picking one, I also really like there's a moonlight and a night from day, and I've used those a lot in the past to actually do that effect. Like we like paint something and then say,
Oh,
oh, look, let's paint it at night, and then use that filter and then paint on top of that to take it from there.
that's so cool.
Yeah. Oh man, this is hard. I do think we should choose one of these. They're fun. I like this one, fall colors. It's kind of
Hmm.
like what we were talking about with turning it into more of an autumn scene. So we could do that. I do have a lot of things on separate layers though, so I'd have to commit to maybe merging these depending on what we want to do. The other thing I like to do is look at selective, excuse me, selective color. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, you can choose here from this drop down a color range that you want to modify the colors within that range. So for example, the yellows, I feel like I might want to mess with. So I think the yellows on top of that mountain might be like a little too strong. So I can choose that. And then within the range of the yellows, so see it's grabbing some of the greens too. It also considers them yellow because they've got a lot of yellow in them. But you can adjust colors within that range, which is really cool. So I could also go to like the blues and just play with those. You can see the color of the top of the house changing. But it's really cool because like for someone like me who I like to merge a lot and not keep things safely on their own layer all the time, this is super helpful with sometimes editing things that you've merged without having to even like select them. You can just kind of go through the color and find them that way. So I think, oh man, I'm like really tempted to merge this. Should we do it? Let's just do it. It's all merged. We did it. Okay, so now one thing that I like to do, I was doing it earlier, is take the smudge brush and get rid of like some hard edges, like lose some of those hard edges, especially on like more distant elements of the scene. Okay, and now I'm just gonna keep painting from here. So that's usually what I do with those adjustment layer effects is I will find ones that I like, apply them, sometimes merge, sometimes just leave them there, and then just keep painting and like go, yeah, just blend them into your painting and go from there.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from chat. Susan says, Maddie, do you find working with a limited palette in traditional lately has affected your digital painting? This one's looking really good.
Oh, thank you. I think maybe it has. So what I've been doing in traditional lately is, yeah, I've been using, I've been painting a lot more from the primary colors, and as a result, a lot of my paintings they've become like a little bit more muted. Like I don't have like quite as bright saturated color in my more recent paintings, and I do think there's just something that I'm enjoying lately with like maybe a slightly more, I don't know if I would say realistic, but slightly more muted. I like the idea of being able to save the bright parts of the painting for the statement I want to make and the thing that's going to be really important. I think I was finding that if you emphasize everything, as much as I like bright colors, if you emphasize everything, then you can't really, yeah, you need to save the emphasis for the special part. If everything's bright, nothing is bright. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So true.
Yeah.
Gotta have that focal point.
Yeah, so I'm trying to save it for the focal point. So here even I'm like thinking, okay, maybe there's too much brightness up here. So I'm trying to tone that down. And maybe I'll add a little bit over onto this side, the balance. We need balance here.
Mountains are so fun because you can make them any shape that you want, just like sculpt away, and yeah, they're a lot of fun. I like doing mountains.
That's so true. I find sometimes mountains can be tricky value-wise with like the light on them, and then if you have snow, that can be tricky, but they're so beautiful, you know? It's worth it. It's worth the challenge. I've never lived near mountains, so they're pretty amazing to me.
Yeah.
Whenever I get to see them. I was playing with the idea of having, in the sketch, I had some grasses up in the foreground here, like as if there was like a light area right here. We could try that and see if it looks good.
I love those bright spots of sunlight that you add to to your paintings. I think those, in my opinion, personally, those are something that like take a lot of self-discipline too. Because like when I was first getting into like a painterly look, I had a tendency to like want to blend everything out, and it was hard for me to
Mm,
have like those sharp, like just like places
yeah.
of bright light. But like the bright light spots are really what kind of like brings it to reality, because that does happen in real life. So
Hmm.
I think you achieve it very well in your paintings.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's something that I feel inspired by a lot when I see it, when I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just see like, oh man, sometimes I'm like walking in the forest and there's like the dappled light and there's
Yeah.
just a light hitting one thing and it just feels like it's a spotlight. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's perfect. How is this in nature setting it up like this and there's flowers like in the spotlight? And I'm just like, oh, it's too good.
Yeah, I can completely relate to being obsessed with dapple lighting. I in real life,
Uh,
in video games, and like, like I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. You guys, I'm experimenting with adding a blur onto this. I don't know if I like it or not. I use a couple different blurs sometimes for, if things are a little close up to get that like lens blur effect. So I can go to filter, blur, and I either usually use Gaussian blur or sometimes motion blur. Like in this case,
Mm.
maybe if I kind of put the motion in the direction like this, it looks like they're blowing in the wind a little bit, something like that. I think it can work. Sometimes I use both. Sometimes I'll do a motion blur and then like a little bit of a Gaussian blur to kind of soften that effect. But yeah, so we have like a little bit of close up grasses. Could have added some wildflowers too. They're always fun to add. So it's always good at the end to kind of like assess, is your focal point really the focal point? And can you maybe add like a couple little highlights or like something to make it stand out even more? Because yeah, detail and contrast will help. So yeah, if I can add a little bit of that at the end, could be a good thing. Not sure I like that. The other thing you can do is with the adjustment layers, it's nice to have the most contrast in the center. So what I'll do is go to brightness contrast adjustment layer and put it up like a bit, like kind of overdo it a bit. And then use take a black paint bucket, see your mask here, and just drop that in. Oops, didn't work. Try it again with the paint bucket. Drop that in so that it masks away that effect. And then I'll go back in with the airbrush and like either white or like a light gray if I want it to be more subtle. And then just come back in and paint back in the brightness
Mm.
and contrast just as like a spotlight so that one area is getting the heightened contrast and then it kind of like fades out. And maybe you want some more up here too, you know what I mean? And then you can just paint that effect in where you want it. You can also use, I like the color dodge. I mean, who doesn't? I think we already have it pretty bright here, so color dodge might overdo it, but it's always fun to try. And like those little bright areas, just add a little extra. So sometimes I'll add it and then just like say, okay, let's just turn it down a little bit. Let's find like where does that work?
Love me some good light bloom.
It's so magic. It really is. And then the other adjustment layer I like to use a lot is the color balance. So here you can scroll down through shadows, midtones, and highlights. And yeah, oh wow, okay, that was bright. But yeah, sometimes I just like to do that and just kind of scroll around here. And sometimes things surprise you, and you're like, oh, that's a fun direction, and you end up changing things up a bit. I mean, they can have a really big effect. These, and then sometimes I do a bunch of stuff, and then I turn it on and off at the end and go back to my original.
Yeah.
But, you know, still fun to play with. Okay, so we did a bunch of stuff. What does it even look like? Not much. I changed a bunch of things that probably cancel each other out a little bit. It's a subtle, subtle change.
It matters, okay? It matters.
Yeah, something. I did something. Something happened. All right. So take my, so let's flip back because this was the original. Was this even the original? No, this was the original. Oh my gosh, I flip so often during the process. I start to forget like what was my original plan for the painting. Sometimes I change it and I end up saying, you know what, I like this way better. I don't care.
Yeah.
I could try adding some little splatters or something for like a little wildflower. I've got a bunch of flower brushes, wildflower splatter brushes. Let's see. They'd be really far away in the picture. That's the thing. Like scale wise, it might not really make too much sense. And we'd want them to have a kind of a warm tone to them. So I'm gonna worry about the shape first of these flowers. I feel like what's gonna happen is some of them are in the highlight and some are in shadow. So we're gonna have to deal with that and figure out what color we want for the highlights and the shadows if we are gonna do this.
Right.
It could work. And then we could put some close up. So there's potential.
Are your brush packs available on your website?
Oh, yes. Thank you. They are, if you go to either maddybellwoar.com or artbymaddy.com, it'll take you to my website and you can find links to all my brush packs there.
Great.
Thank you. I'm working on a couple new ones too. I'm trying to make some nice watercolor brushes.
Awesome.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm trailing some off. So I painted using the brushes that had kind of like a stamp effect, and now I'm like dotting in some random ones because I don't want it to be too like bunched up. I want it to feel more natural. Like there's some stragglers randomly around. And let's look at color. So I'm doing the lock transparency again. And then in the shadows, I'm going to try just making them a little darker. I'm not sure what color works. That feels maybe a bit too dark. And then in the light, maybe they can be even brighter.
Oh yeah, that's looking great.
Thanks. Flowers are always a good choice.
Kind of helps add depth too, kind of just like the ones closer up are bigger, the ones farther back are smaller and stuff. And,
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we could put a couple in the foreground.
Just wanted to let you know that we have like 6 or 7 minutes left.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's try adding a couple up here and we'll see if we like it. So in the foreground, it might be too much, but I'm gonna put the blur filter so we don't have to paint them very nicely.
Right.
We can literally
just blobs.
Yeah, just blobs. I love that. I remember I used to have like when I would paint characters, I would sometimes do these backgrounds and I would paint these detailed backgrounds and then I would blur them out. And one day I was just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then I started painting them like really messy and then blurring them and it looked the same. I was
Yeah.
like, okay. Oh, there we go. So I'll put a little bit of a shadow on them. And a little stem.
Oh, yeah, I love how
Okay.
you tilted the flowers with the grass to make them look like they're blowing with the grass. That's a really nice detail.
Oh, thank you. Let's try the motion blur. Tone it down a little bit. I think I like it. Let's try the Gaussian blur. We're just gonna find out which one's better. I'm not sure. You know what? It's probably like either work just fine. I'm not gonna overthink it. I think either of those. It's
I
almost
think
the
it looks
same.
great.
Thank you. And then I might try just a couple more. Filter, and then I'll just use the same filter that's right there. Cool.
Everyone in chat is saying that they have like one or two packs of your brushes, and also that your painting looks gorgeous, and they're
Aww.
also just like love your streams, and they're sad that there's
Aww.
only a few minutes left.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this. This tree in the front here, I think could use a little love, so I'll take my last some of my last detail time here for this tree, and maybe like a shadow under the tree, because that tree would make sense. And these trees, just little shadows. And flip. Does flipping tell us anything? Mm. I also lately I've started to experiment with like scribbles and cross hatches and stuff. I kind of like stepped away from those kind of things when I got more into the painting mindset because it's more of like drawing techniques, but I feel like they
Mhm.
can be nice in painting and kind of illustrative looking. So it's fun to like
Yeah.
add little details like that.
Different ways to add texture rather than using texture brushes only.
Exactly. And it's fun to do and yeah, get a little bit of can give a little personality.
Hmm. Especially in the mountains like that, where like it could go any which way that you want, like, and there's so much texture and it's far away and you could just imply a lot just by a few scribbles.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, when you look at the pictures of mountains, you've got all those little kind of veins coming down and
Hmm.
lots of tiny little cracks and crevices.
What would you say is like your favorite type of landscape? Do you like the like more intimate like forest landscapes or like big landscapes like this, or what do you think?
Oh, I would say forest landscapes. I like a lot of different stuff, but that's got to be my favorite. Like
Hmm.
just that with the warm light coming through the trees, and it could be usually I like to paint summer, but autumn is great too for that with like the light bouncing around, all that gold light. But I do like a lot of like tree cover. I like
Yeah.
the light filtering through the trees. That's probably my favorite. But there's enough green in here for me. I could be happy.
Robert says, Maddie, your painting looks fantastic as usual.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Susan says, such a warm, cozy painting. Well done. Chris says, energetic lines add so much.
Thank you. It's true, and it's nice to, again, I keep saying this, but it's nice that you can just make a new layer and try something out. I feel like that helps me Like I do traditional too, as we've talked about earlier, but I really love about digital that I feel like I can experiment and like have that freedom to just try something and it doesn't matter if you don't like it, you just get rid of the layer. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's so freeing.
Roger in chat said you should have been there for Maddie's waterfall phase.
Oh, that's true. I was painting waterfalls like all the time on stream. Yeah, I couldn't stop. It's been a while now. I should probably do one again. I'm gonna be rusty.
Nice.
Waterfalls usually are surrounded by a lot of foliage too. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
All right, we are coming up on our last couple of minutes here. Maddie, could you let everyone know where they could find you on social media? Like what's your handle and everything like that?
Sure. On Instagram, you can find me with my name, Maddy Bellwoar. Here on Behance, I'm Maddie. And if you are interested in checking out my traditional work, it's lucky.melon on Instagram. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
And Maddie was also saying before we started the stream that she's like working on a YouTube channel too. So
That's true. Yeah, I'm working on it. It's just my name, Maddy Bellwoar. It's going a little slow, but it is going. And yeah, I'm gonna
go follow
hopefully.
her on YouTube.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was so fun having you on today, Maddie. I am looking forward to maybe in the future doing this again with you. Thank you everyone for watching. Go follow Maddie, and stick around because we have more streams coming up next. Thanks everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye, everyone.